And I do believe that government can play a very important role. I know some have distorted what I've said about government, but I believe government is important. And it is there, I believe, to promote life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. What has happened too often is that people who seemingly mean well have promoted things that do not encourage the development of innate talent in people. And hence we have generation after generation of people living in dependent situations. It's not that they're bad people. It's that this is what they've been given. This is all they know in many cases. I think we have an opportunity here to do something about that. If we take a more holistic approach. When we talk about HUD traditionally, most people think putting houses over putting roofs over the heads of poor people. But it has the ability to be so much more than that, particularly if we take a holistic approach. And we think about how do we develop our fellow human beings. I see each individual as human capital that can be developed to become part of the engine that drives our nation, or if not developed, becomes part of the load. And we are the ones who are tasked with helping to make the difference. So I do believe that government is extraordinarily important. And one of the things that I want to do, instead of just listening to the sage people of Washington, D.C., and there are some wise people here, I want to go on a listening tour. I want to hear from the people with boots on the ground who are actually administering programs, who are benefiting from the programs. I want to see what actually works and what does not work. I want to analyze why it works and why it doesn't work. Before I go on the road to do that, I want to do that at HUD. We have people there who've been there for 10, 20, 30, even 40 years. And I don't think a lot of people listen to what they have to say. I suspect that they have garnered a tremendous amount of information. And I want to get that information from them. I want to work with them on a regular basis. Some people say, but medicine, why would you go into something like HUD? Well, I actually believe that there's a tremendous nexus, a great intersection, because good health has a lot to do with a good environment. And after working so hard on so many people and then putting them back into an environment with lead and with all kinds of inducements for asthma and other chronic diseases, that's not very, very helpful. And I'm looking forward to, the Safe and Healthy Homes program at HUD and enhancing that program very significantly. And why is all of this so important? Well, there was a Brookings study, a very important study, which showed that if people did 3 things, their likelihood of living in poverty would be 2% or less. And that's really what we want to do, keep people from living in poverty. Those 3 things were graduate from high school, get a job, and wait until you're married to have children. Think about that. And, what that means is that there are points of intervention, things that we can do to make a difference in people's lives. Also, think about this fact. In terms of our human capital that's being wasted, we have 5% of the world's population and 25% of the prison inmates. That means there's something wrong. We have high recidivism rates. We have people who go into prison with little education and little in the way of skills, and they come out with little education and little in the way of skills. So what are they going to do? They go back to doing what they were doing before, hence we have these high recidivism rates. We need to think about how do we give them education? How do we give them skills? How do we cultivate the innate talent that is in those individuals so that they become part of the engine once again? And recognize we only have 330 million people. Now, it sounds like a lot of people, but that's a quarter of the people they have in India or China. We're going to have to compete with those nations into the future, which means we have to develop all of our talent. Now you say, well, that all sounds great and wonderful, but you were a pediatric neurosurgeon. How could you have anything wonderful to say about any of these things? Well, you know, I have to chuckle when I hear people say things like that, because there's an assumption that you can only do one thing, and that we have these very limited brains and they're incapable of learning anything else. I find that kind of humorous, particularly knowing what the human brain is capable of. Billions of neurons, hundreds of billions of interconnections can process more than 2 million bits of information in 1 second. Any brain can do that. You can't overload it. You hear some people say you overload your brain. You can't do it. If you learned one new fact every second, it would take you more than 3 million years to challenge the capacity of your brain. So we do have the ability to learn. More importantly, we have the ability to work together. And that is absolutely critical. We in America, Democrats, Republicans, Independents, we are not each other's enemies. We must come to that understanding. There are real people out there who really want to destroy us, but we don't need to be doing that ourselves. We need to be combining our collective intellect. And one of the things that I learned in my private life as a board member at Kellogg for 18 years and Costco for 16 years is how to select a good CEO. And I'll tell you, a good CEO doesn't necessarily know everything about the business. He's not a marketing specialist. He may not be a financial specialist. There are many things that he doesn't know, but he knows how to pick those people and how to use them. And that is one of the marks of good leadership. So in closing, you know, I've been very fortunate to be able to move from the bottom rung of the socioeconomic level to the top rung, and to understand how people feel in all those different levels. And I got to tell you, we're all in the same boat. And if part of the boat sinks, the rest of it is going down too. And it means what we need to do is exercise true compassion. True compassion is not keeping people in a situation where we can feel good about what we're doing. True compassion is putting them in a situation where they can feel good about where they're going. Thank you.